Hello, teammates, and welcome to The Goal Diggers, a program where we discuss stories of leadership and motivation with sports serving as a metaphor dedicated to daily grinders, corporate athletes, and go getters. This is Simone Haldon digging in with my co hosts, Relly San Agustin and Robbie De Vera, and we are your resident goal diggers. You guys might be wondering where Carlos Pineda is, but don't worry, he's still working with us behind the scenes, making sure that we still give you the best experience that we can this season. So just an update for you guys, we finished our first season in 2020 and we had an amazing time uncovering some valuable life lessons from fellow goal diggers and top sports personalities who have shared their personal stories exemplifying what it means to have a challenger mindset, to leave a legacy, and to break barriers, just to name a few. And now, we're very stoked to be welcoming season number 2, where we've already locked in an interesting and exciting lineup of unique individuals whose stories we can't wait to dig into and share with you. This season, we're gonna learn from these top performing individuals' life stories and professions and find out what it takes to sustain high performance. And I wouldn't be able to do this without the help of my fellow goal diggers. So, Relly, Robbie, what can our teammates expect from this season's opening episode?
Hello, teammates. Well, first of all, I'd like to greet you guys a happy new year. I know it's pretty late in the month already. But yes, we're very excited for season 2. And, we have a very special guest right now who is pretty much, how I say, very relatable to our situation right now, especially in the new year. And she can actually help us on how to cope. And, we're very excited on how it's going to pan out in this episode. So, Robbie, please do the honors.
Thanks, Rels. So happy New Year, teammates. We're excited to get our show and its new season on the road. And we've got an early present with this conversation that we will have with another kindred individual, a fellow goal digger and one of the forerunners of sports psychology in the country. We have Professor Dr. Marissa M. Guinto. So we hope you stay tuned as we dig into how Doc Marissa can teach us a thing or two about how to become a high performer. Back to you, Sim.
Thanks, guys. So today we have with us one of the forerunners of sports psychology in the Philippines, whose years' experience have allowed her to work with junior, recreational, varsity, professional, and elite athletes, and to mentor aspiring sports psychologists. She is currently an associate professor and research director at the College of Human Kinetics in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Her research interests include cultivating the champion mindset, harnessing community resilience in crisis and conflict, spirituality in sports, and mindfulness in performance. And she's a single mother of 5 and a survivor of personal and natural disasters. Let's all welcome Doc Marissa Guinto.
Hello, teammates. And of course, I'm very, very privileged and excited to be here in the season 2 of the Gold Diggers. Actually, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the Gold Diggers, and I there's only one word for them. They're awesome. And I think we are all fortunate to have a team like them, very dynamic, who really thought about doing this for all of us. So I really have to say thank you for the privilege of joining this wonderful team of Gold Diggers.
Thank you for that, Doc. So, just to kick things off, what have you been up to lately?
Well, of course, as you mentioned, I'm a full-time professor at the University of the Philippines College of Human Kinetics. So I've been teaching full-time since the pandemic. And we all know very well that we had to make a transition to fully remote learning. And of course, even as a sports psychology, to do all sessions online. And research also to adjust everything from data collection to analyzing data. Everything has to be done online. So everything that I've been doing before on a face-to-face platform is now really online, or at least non face to face. So it's not as if my schedule has eased up. In fact, because of all of these webinars and interactions online, it's like we really need to manage our time and our energy even more than ever.
That's great, Doc. So you're doing a lot of important work right now. But maybe just to bring our audience up to speed on what you do, can you tell us what led you to specializing in sports psychology?
Well, honestly, it was by accident that this happened, because when the Philippine Sports Commission during the early 90s thought of opening a sports psychology unit at the then Philippine Center for Sports Medicine, there were really no sports psychologists at the time. And so I remember being told by our department chair in Ateneo, where I was teaching at that time, that the Philippine Sports Commission called to look for a sports psychologist, but that they said there was no sports psychologist to begin with. And then, so after that initial call, I got another, what do you call this, call through the department chair again, who told me to talk to someone from PSC who's insisting to speak to a psychologist who who can do sports psychology, or who is at least interested in sports. And at that time, I was the easiest shoe in, because aside from being a psychologist, I was also into several sports. One of them is I was swimming, and then I was also part of a taekwondo club at the time, and had done some what do you call it? I was competing, you know. And so they said, "Oh, why don't you try it out?" And so I thought it was just like a session, or maybe something that they wanted, to some help with. And so when I went for my first interview, I thought at the time, the medical director at the time was Dr. Tiron Reyes, asked me if I wanted to be a sports psychologist. Of course, initially I said I didn't have the training for it, but he said, no, you know what, you just have to work with our national athletes, and then try to really help them in their mental game, etc., etc. So I took a chance on that. There were no templates before us. There were no one before us to really coach us with that. So it was at that point where I thought it was just going to be an episode in my life. And then afterwards, when there was an invitation to send one of the sports psychologists in our team at that time to the Hong Kong Sports Institute, I was the one sent there. So I spent 3 months there working with their resident sports psychologists at the time. And then when I came back, of course, bringing what I learned and all the resources that I brought along with, that started it all. And then after a few years, I went back to full-time teaching, and then took of course, my doctorate. I didn't know that it will follow me, and it did. And years after, I'm still here, you know. I would really have to admit it wasn't something that I really planned for. But I'm happy for that accident. I'm happy for that opportunity.
That's a good story, Doc. So one of the more important things that you did as part of your role right now is that dissertation that you prepared in the Olympics. Can you share us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So being part of the academe, of course, will also challenge you to take advanced studies. And so when I decided to do my doctorate, it was, of course, a topic that was so close to me, no, about working with athletes and all that. So when the time came for me to decide what I would do for my dissertation, I thought, okay, why not study what makes a champion? And prior to that, okay, I had the opportunity to attend the conference in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. And this is the pre-Olympic Congress where all these researchers and sports scientists get together to present their studies and really listen to others do their studies. And I was just a participant at the time, so I was listening to everybody talk about what makes a champion. And I said to myself, well, why don't I do a study on what makes a champion among Filipino athletes? And so when I came back from the 2008 pre-Olympic Congress, I said to myself, I was going to do a study on what makes the Filipino a champion. And little did I know that I would eventually present my study on what makes a champion in the next Olympics. That's the 2012 London Olympics. So the next time the pre-Olympic conference happened, I was there already presenting my study, which was inspired when I attended the pre-Olympic conference in 2008. So that's where the study began, and it gained momentum even after I graduated from my PhD, because it evolved into a program. It became also the cornerstone of my work, applied work with athletes, and also in research. Yeah, that was how it all started.
That's great, Doc. That's an awesome contribution to Philippine sports, and the dedication you put in, especially for sports psychology and working with athletes. How big a role has sports psychology been today? How has it evolved, and how is it very important now when dealing with top athletes in the country?
Oh, well, of course, I'm very fortunate with the next batch of sports psychologists that came. First in the Philippine Sports Commission, and now we have a very a good team there at the Philippine Sports Commission. We have a fully functioning sports psychology unit that really attends to the needs of the athletes, more so now during this COVID, where the sports psychologists in the Philippine Sports Commission are really going out of their way to find out how our national athletes are doing and responding to their needs. It's a long ways from where we started many years ago, where we were just really a handful. Of course, it also helped that we became a recognized area of practice and of research in the umbrella organization of the Psychological Association of the Philippines. So a few years back, we actually proposed that the sport and exercise psychology be acknowledged as a discipline, as a legitimate area of practice and research in psychology in the Philippines. So when that was formalized, it gave us a better handle of the discipline. We were able to also invite other psychologists to consider practice in the field of sport and exercise. And we're a growing organization. So that for me is actually very positive, and I'm very excited. I feel like a parent actually seeing my children grow up. I say that with, of course, with endearment, because being part of the forerunners of sports psychology in the country, I cannot help but celebrate all of these milestones, especially in terms of how sports psychology has been acknowledged, really as a legitimate field in sports science, and of course among our athletes in the country. If you will notice, especially in the 2019 SEA Games where we hosted, I was actually so excited, because there were several sports psychologists who were called on board to beef up and to reinforce the team that was working with our athletes at that time. And so I think there was a very good exposure of sports psychology consultants and practitioners during the 2019 Southeast Asian Games, and of course that we did very well as a country. Also supported the contribution of sport and exercise psychology to the performance of our athletes. So I would say that, well, compared to other countries, we might be behind, and maybe we still have to grow up much more. But if I will look at the history of sports and exercise psychology in the Philippines, we've come a long way. And I'm very happy to see the current generation of athletes who are very open and very willing to work with sports psychology consultants.
It's great, Doc. And, it's such a crucial element right now, especially in sports, for our athletes to perform at the highest level. No, it's all mental, and going beyond sport as well. It's very relevant. No, so and especially in our time right now, especially in the pandemic. So looking forward to what we can actually achieve right now in our conversation. So I will turn it over to Simone, who will lead the first line of questioning. Sim.
Thanks, Relly. So now, Doc, we'd like to dig deeper into your research and even your experience in sports psychology. And you've worked with different top athletes with unique personalities and with high performance performers of varied backgrounds. So do they have something in common in terms of what motivates them to succeed?
Well, of course, no. If I will go back to the study that I made among the champions here in the Philippines, although there is no one template of how they became champions, there are, I would say, themes, no, or patterns that we could learn from. And I think this is what I've been doing years after I made that study, is to really discover and nurture and cultivate the that kind of mindset among Filipinos. And you don't even have to be an athlete to learn from them. In fact, many of my clients are corporate clients, and one of the training programs that I've developed really is the cultivation of the champion mindset at the workplace. And here, I really try to apply what I've learned from our champion athletes, because it's very difficult to just look outside. No, first of all, being a high performer is also contextualized in real situations in our culture. We cannot just take from lessons from foreign studies, or even from athletes or high performers outside the country, and expect to be able to make it work here in our context. It's very important to acknowledge that our culture has its own way of defining what is success, for instance, and what is high performance. So going back to your question, for instance, that what is common and what stands out among the champions from the Philippines? Well, first of all, of course, is that this is a very personal quest for each one of them. Pursuing one's vision of success or goal, or let's say championship in their case, is a very personal quest that they had to take. Okay, and when we talk about quest, it is something that you have not taken before. You're not even sure if you're gonna come back successful, but you take it on because of something that compels you, a very personal reason. Sometimes we call it purpose, sometimes we call it the big why, but it always has to be something personal. Okay, so for all of us daily grinders, this can be something that can be meaningful to you and your family. For example, working during this COVID and doing something that you never did before, or starting out a project you've never tried before. Why are you doing this? Okay, so for the champions, this is very clear. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you taking the path that you've decided to take? Why are you even training every day in a very rigorous manner? Nobody's forcing you. You took it upon yourself. So this very personal purpose is something that is intrinsic in all of their stories, I would say, of becoming a champion. Okay, it is not something that they knew for sure they would achieve from the very beginning, but because of the powerful personal reason or personal meaning, that it really compels them to move towards that direction. Okay, and so I would say even their idea of being passionate about what they're doing is a very personal quest for each one of them. And so that is what I would like to invite all of us, to discover what what's the personal meaning that we have in everything that we're doing right now? Because that is what will guide us to pursue awesome goals, to overcome all our fears, and to also reach for things that we've never thought we could do before. I don't know if that makes sense um, to what
Of course, it
we're
does, Don.
experiencing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned also before there's actually a Filipino term for it. What was that again?
The Filipino term for hugot.
Yeah.
Hugot ba yan?
Hugot.
Yeah. O siguro, kung mas madali para sa atin unawain, no? Tanungin natin sa sarili natin, ano ba yung hugot natin? Bakit natin ginagawa yung ginagawa natin, no? So, let's make it a little bit more personal, no? Among the champions that I studied, no? No, let me just tell you the 5 champions that I studied, no? So I had Paeng Nepomuceno, I had Bongku, Eugene Torre, Django Bustamante, and Bata Reyes. Okay, so how did they even get chosen for the study? First of all, I said I wanted to distill, the experience of championship among Filipinos, and therefore I had to look for athletes who reached the summit of their careers, okay, and who performed, okay, at the peak of their careers at the world arena, okay. So we're not talking here about Asian Sea Games. We're talking about a World Championship, World Cup, okay. Even if we don't have gold medalists yet, and I say yet, at the Olympics, no? The World Cup in different sports disciplines represents also the Olympics at that level. So, for example, in bowling at that time, when Paeng and Bongku were competing, there was no bowling in the Olympics, and the World Cup is really the Olympic level competition for their sport. And then, of course, in chess, okay, because we didn't have chess at the Olympics, okay, the world competitions where they had to battle the other grandmasters was really the Olympics of that time, okay. And then, of course, for the World Championships in pool, no, or in billiards, is also the parallelism of Olympics at that level. And so I said to myself, if I really wanted to understand the what makes a Filipino champion, I had to go to that level. And so that in itself was my own quest as a PhD student at that time. Papayag ba sila lahat, di ba? And you know what? I was so fortunate that the 5 of them actually agreed to be part of the study. And so that was the beginning of my personal quest. And to start it off, I thought it was just going to be a study. I didn't know that as I was studying them, as I was listening to their story, even my own personal story of my own quest to be the best that I can be as a sports psychologist, as as a PhD student at the time, a graduate student, and even as a single mom of 5 kids. By the way, I was a single mom already of 5 kids when I started my quest, okay, to do my doctorate and at the same time also do my dissertation. I realized that I wasn't alone and that even my own personal journey to complete, okay, my dissertation and finish my graduate studies was my own quest. As I was listening to the stories of these champions, it really made sense to me what they were going through could also reflect my own journey. I may not be at the same level of sport performance as they were at the time, but I can certainly discover my own personal purpose, my own personal meaning on exceeding the boundaries or the limitations. And so when I did that dissertation, I didn't even think that I would present it at the Olympics in the 2012. I thought it was just going to be a study. I did also think that it would be eventually acknowledged as one of the contributions the Mental Health magazine, in fact, declared as one of the important contributions in the landscape of sports, the research. So all of these things are byproducts of that kind of mindset. When you pursue something that is deeply and profoundly meaningful to you, then whatever it is that you pursue will definitely be excellent and definitely high performance.
So, Doc, I mean, people have different motivations for doing things, right? So, and in your dissertation, you discovered and shared with us how the meaning of victory or success can be classified into two things, the external and the internal meaning. Can you explain to us what falls under those two classifications?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. No, you know what? When I was listening to the stories of these champions, I realized that there were two meanings of success or victory for them. Of course, when they win all of these, what do you call this, tournaments or competition, there are trophies, there are rewards, there are recognitions. These are all external um, meanings or acknowledgement of their success. Okay, so it's standard. It is acknowledged by the public. You get all the recognition that you want. That's external. That's important, of course it is, because that's the yardstick for you to know that you've finally accomplished something that is acknowledged by everyone. But I think in all their stories, what is most significant is the personal and deeper meaning, and what I call the second layer of success is what is personally meaningful to them as successful or as victorious. Okay, what winning really is to them on a personal level. Let's take, for example, um, Bonku, the only female in my sample of Filipino champions. If you really listen to her story and understand how she even started in bowling, from being a single mom of two children whose husband left her for another woman. And that was when she started to try bowling at the age of 21. Now you wonder who starts their sports career at 21. Isn't that too old? But then she moved on to win championships and became the first Filipino athlete to be acknowledged in the Guinness World Book of Records for her phenomenal performance. Even beating the all-time record of men and women in bowling at the World Cup. Okay, so what was it? Ano yung hugot niya? No? Hindi lang naman niya gustong manalo. Of course, maganda yun, no? Na kahit na late na siya nagsimula dun sa kanyang career, ay nanalo pa rin siya, at talagang hindi lang basta-basta kahit anong panalo, pero World Cup at saka talagang Guinness World Book of Record pa. Diba? Pero pag naintindihan natin yung kwento niya, it's really more than that, no? It's also about upholding her worth as a woman despite what happened, despite what we call a broken marriage, despite being left by a husband for another woman. All right. So that I thought was very powerful. And I recall her stories. Of course, when she tells these stories, it sounds funny, but surely it wasn't funny when it happened. And she said, alam mo, minsan, when I want to go really for a strike, di ba? I really think of the face of my husband among the pins. And talagang tumba lahat yan. Okay? I mean, she says it lightly, but there's a deeper meaning to that. When we are authentic with ourselves and we are willing to face, okay, our deepest needs and aspirations without having to be like everyone else. To be honest, that I want to do this because I want to feel worthy as a person. Or even the likes of Django. Makikipagsapalaran ako para sa pamilya ko. So knowing fully well that it's a billiards that will take me to this comfort and this pass out of poverty, then I will do it. So, maganda nga na nananalo ako. Pero ang pinaka-importante is mapakain ko ang pamilya ko, that I can actually save my family from poverty. These are very real and deeply meaningful, as we will now call it, hugot, di ba? Na kailangan natin harapin at kailangan natin tanggapin. Lahat tayo may hugot. Hanapin natin yan.
I love this take on hugot. You know, it's like putting it into perspective. And what's really interesting is, I mean, how can we develop personal meaning, Doc?
Yeah, that is a very personal path, no? Pero siguro lalo na ngayon, no, during COVID, no, we have more time to actually be quiet and be comfortable with ourselves. In fact, when I think about it, before COVID, we were so busy putting too many things in our schedule and trying to fill up our days with all kinds of activities. And then when we have a break, we fill it up with more activities to go here and there and to have Instagrammable holidays and all. It's like we were so caught up, you know, with doing things that we didn't have much time to really become the person that we would like to be, because that needs space, that needs time, that needs silence. And I would speak about this as that sacred space that we owe to ourselves. No? Are we willing to do that? Now, before the COVID, we were not compelled to do that. Now, more than ever, we have the time. In fact, in the beginning of the COVID, I would not be surprised if people were uncomfortable with the time, too much time with oneself. Because sa totoo lang, hindi natin hinarap yan noon eh. So, pag tinanong mo ako ngayon or pag tanungin natin halimbawa how it came to be for the champions, it came at low points in their lives. Like, if you think about the story of Bongu, it came when she felt that she had nothing much in her life because her husband left her. She was a single mom with two sons at the time. At hindi pa moda ang single mom at that time. Ikinahihiya pa ang magiging single mom. Parang binubulong-bulong pa yan. Pero of course, in between her tears and all her difficulties, she had to discover something that she liked. And she said, bowling kept me from crying. You know, it gave her a break from her crying spells. And before she knew it, it was therapeutic. And it gave her a chance to join little competitions. Before you knew it, she was winning. And then she discovered herself. So it can be a process like that. It can be a process, for example, like Django and Batteries finding that there is nothing that they can do except to play billiard. And with that limitation, they found the meaning. Okay? Wala silang ibang magawa kung hindi maglaro. Okay? So, I know what you mean. No? Maybe if we could have a strategy, an approach, a template to find our personal meaning, I would say it's really to have that courage to face oneself and to really earmark that silence and that sacred space for us to look at ourselves and to be authentic. What is it that I can do well? What is it that I need to nurture and cultivate in myself so that I can make a contribution, not only to myself to have a meaningful and fulfilling life, but to contribute to others as well. So, hindi siya madali. For some, it can be an accident. Like me, ang daming accident sa buhay ko. Pero para sa iba, kailangan talagang pag-isipan at paglaanan ng panahon.
So it's still a personal journey as well to develop personal meaning. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, Doc. There's so many things alone in the first part of this episode, but now we're gonna have to dig deeper into what comes after developing your personal meaning. So what are some of the things that we can expect or do to help put it into action? So Robbie, take it away.
Thank you, Sim and Doc Marisa. So, lots of notes being taken right now from my end on what I gathered so far. And what I got from the discussion so far is to try to look at my own goals. They may be my professional goals or my personal goals, and be more importantly beyond the external rewards, as you say, it's more important to develop also my personal hugot, or to make it more meaningful for me, to help make the journey easier to achieve. And I like how you brought up the Philippine legends that we've had, no, the likes of Paeng Nepomuceno and Bongku and Efren Bata, because I think at the highest level the difference between winners and losers is really rooted in personal meaning. So, I mean, if they actually found a purpose deeper than the external with reflection, I think it's a good recipe to actually make it easier and more tangible, that end goal that they wanted to achieve. So that's really great. So
Yeah.
so I like this whole point on purpose, and I can imagine there should be some sort of particularity in the way that these high performers approach their respective games. So from your experience, Doc, what is the approach of high performers that we can learn from?
Okay, so Robbie, before we move on to that, I just like to take on what you said, the difference between winners and losers. First of all, our champions are very familiar with losing. Okay, I think it's not that they don't lose or that they abhor losing, but that they have become friends actually with losing and have not been scared to lose. So that when we approach also our personal meaning to doing what we want to do, we have to also ask that question: will I do what I want to do even if I get rejected? Even if I lose much more. Kasi kung kaya natin harapin yon, na I will do this and take the consequence of potential loss, potential rejection, or even ridicule, then perhaps we have discovered what is truly meaningful. So losing is not the worst thing that could happen to us. It's not even that. It's failing to take the courage to take the first step, diba, towards something that we may potentially lose, but because it is so important, we will do it. So winning and losing are not necessarily opposites. And this is something that I also learned from the champions who shared their life stories to me, because they were not averse to losing. On the second point that you raised, so what do we do, no? Okay, alam na natin yung hugot natin. Okay, alam natin na ito yung makahulugan para sa atin at gustong-gusto natin. How do we translate that desire, that personal meaning to something that's doable? And so here is where the hard work begins. After going through the process of discovering what is meaningful, we need to be willing to do the deliberate and intentional work every day. Okay, there is no shortcut, and our champions will be the first to tell us that there is no substitute to pure, deliberate, and dedicated and unrelenting hard work. Okay, so hindi siya isang magic potion na pag ginawa mo to ay tiyak na magiging successful ka, pero yung kaya mo bang gawin yung mahirap gawin araw-araw? And I remember, for instance, what Eugene Torres said, no? Perfect practice makes perfect. Yung practice na yan, araw-araw natin ginagawa. Di ba? Walang nakatingin, perhaps walang spectators, walang fans, okay? Siguro para sa ating mga daily grinders, maaring wala nakakakita, pero yung ginagawa nating malilit na bagay araw-araw, okay? Are we willing to do it to a level of perfection or excellence, even if nobody is watching, such that when the moment, when the opportunity comes, and we're not always that those are not always predictable, that because our default mode is to perform consistently towards our our goals, okay, on a daily basis, that when the opportunity, when the break comes, that we are ready and we are at the forefront of the performance, so to speak. Hindi natin kailangan magkunwari or biglang mag-iba ang persona natin kasi yun yung ginagawa natin araw-araw. So siguro yun yung natutunan ko rin dun sa kwento ng ating mga champions, no, na talagang araw-arawin mo yun. Sabi pa nga ni Django, yung bang kaya mong gawin ng walang kapaguran. Ano yun? Diba? Tayo lang makakasagot nun kung ikaw ay nagtatrabaho sa opisina, kung ikaw ay may business, may online business, kung ikaw ay may part-time job, kung you're juggling between several jobs, whatever it is, you will have to do that intentional and focused hard work. Okay? Step by step. No shortcut. Okay? I don't know, Robbie, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, no? So parang what I've written down so far is that basically I like the point that you mentioned on the intentionality and the execution, right? So it's being mindful in the process. Ika nga sabi nung the champion that you mentioned, it's perfect practice that makes perfect execution. So I like that because it shows na you have to be able to, really be mindful of the approach to make your journey toward the goal easier to achieve. And I also link it to what you said earlier on setbacks or failure being part of the learning process that will also lead toward the goals. So it's how how like the top performing athletes in the world, they always say like there's no such thing as a loss. They say na it's either you win or you learn. So
Yes.
it's so related to that, and I like that because there's a mindfulness in the approach that they will use every single bit of what they can to help egg them on the journey.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for actually mentioning that term mindful, no? Because I tried to actually use the term intentional because mindful might connote a practice that we also promote among our athletes, but that's also very appropriate, no? When we are mindful as opposed to being mindless, diba? And a lot of times we are mindless, no? When we scroll, for example, on our phones endlessly or watch Netflix, binging on Netflix, there's nothing wrong with that, no? There's nothing wrong with connecting with our friends or keeping in touch or abreast with what's happening by going through social media or taking a break and watching Netflix. But when it becomes mindless, and we are no longer intentional about the more important things that we need to accomplish, that these break times are break, not the main event of the day, okay, then leading our lives mindlessly will really close a lot of doors to opportunities that are just waiting for us to discover. So being mindful means that you are able to see, the present moment for all of its potentials and all of its beauty and all of its opportunity, because there is so much that presents itself at the present moment. However, like what happened last year during the pandemic, if we are insisting on having the past be the template of what we are experiencing now, we will keep on ruminating, we will keep on ranting and complaining because we are missing the past. And we fail to live in the present because we're insisting that we should be living the way we used to live. And I think that is where we miss a lot of opportunities. And so when we are mindful, we are aware, we are fully aware of the moment and the present. Diba? Sabi nga ni Kung Fu Panda, diba? The reason why it's called present, it's a gift. Diba? The past is history, the future is a mystery, but the present is a gift. Diba? The present being present in present is actually a gift we can give to ourselves. So maganda yung binanggit mo, Robbie, na being mindful, no? Where we are totally aware, we are totally attentive to what we are doing. And even as high-performing athletes, the best way to perform at the highest level is to be totally present at each moment in the game. And that game can be moving every second. Okay, so even with basketball, for instance, you do a free throw, if you're thinking about the score that you will get if you put in the ball, okay, you will lose concentration. You will be anxious. You will be nervous. And if you think like, I missed the first shot in the two free throws, grabe, I need to put this in kasi hindi ko nagawa yung una. You're worrying about the past. You're likely to miss that shot. So to be totally present at that moment when your task is to shoot that ball from the free throw line is similar to what we face every day, especially now in 2021. Kung ibabalik at ibabalik natin yung mga hindi natin nagawa noong 2020, or mag-aalala tayo that, naku, baka matapos itong taon na to na wala na naman ako nagawa, we're already worrying about the future, then we cannot really be totally intentional with what we need to accomplish today at this moment, okay? Step by step.
That's really great, Doc. So really excellent, because while you were talking, it pulled up a lot of like examples that we could relate to. Badly put, like in our previous episode, Heidelin Diaz,
Yeah.
she mentioned that she's been training for what, 20 years, but 1 second of lapse in concentration there's equals to no lift, diba? And I can imagine, like, really, Simone and myself, we were all players. You know how when the team relaxes for like a split second in the game, and then it can change the outcome of the game in the end. So I love the recommendation on being totally present and being intentional in the approach, being mindful and being attentive to what you're doing. In fact, I read about how, some of the best some of the biggest leaders that we have in the world, Elon Musk and like Bill Gates, badly put. So these people, they have so many things on their plate and so little time to do them. So what do they do to stretch time? And the answer is really mindfulness. So that's what I like about what you said about being intentional in the present, no? Being totally present to make sure that you can make the most out of your opportunity. So thanks so much for that, Doc. Lots of learnings there. And I turn you over to Relly for his bit. Rels?
Thanks, Rob. Hi, Doc.
Yes, hi.
It's such a pleasure just listening to you right now. And, it's like free consultation, right? Of what's this. So it's such an honor, especially for the viewers to listen to you and to really dig in, especially the athletes that you've interviewed, like sila Paeng and sila Bongku, and and it really goes to show that they're just really human, but they really strive hard to overcome whatever difficulties or misfortune and really become a top athlete, right? So I think I would like to know more, and I think the viewers would like to know more as well, is given, let's say, in line with what makes a high performer. Let's say I like to bring up instances of, let's say, teams or players that have won major titles in their lifetime. It's not easy. So let's say, for example, like the likes of, let's say in tennis, you have Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal. And, we've seen it, right? Someone would win. It's okay. They bounce back the next year. Alternate, they'll win. The other person will win again. And it's okay. And they keep doing that. And in the NBA, if you look at the NBA, say, for example, with the Spurs, the San Antonio Spurs, in 2014, they actually won the title. But if you were to look back the year before, in 2013, playing against the Heat, against LeBron James, they were so close to winning it already. I think Game 6, until Ray Allen took that shot and just really destroyed everything. And then in the UAP, Ateneo winning season 80 against LaSalle after losing to the same team in season 79. So imagine this, right? So, having to lose and then suddenly having that motivation to actually bounce back and actually win it the following year. And it's like a Cinderella story. But what really sparks this comeback, given that, it's a tough competition. It's a professional league, and who knows? It's like I hate to say it, but 1 in a million, that they will actually win it the following year. So what goes on in the minds of these players and how do they prepare?
Okay, actually, I mean, all these examples that you gave, no, are very real examples that I'm sure our listeners and viewers can relate with, no? And even in our own lives, no? Siguro let's bring it down closer to to the daily grinders, no? What does it take to stand up once again after, let's say, a big loss of income or loss of jobs, like in what happened in 2020, or even a heartbreak. No, it could be relational. Um, it's very similar. Okay, first of all, going back to our conversation earlier, that first of all, athletes know that when they venture into this high level of competition, that there is a possibility of losing. I mean, I don't think there's any athlete, and especially the examples that you gave, who will play only because they're sure to win. Walang ganun, di ba? Kaya nga, there's so much emotion, there's so much, what do you call this, um, intensity in high level competition because of the emotions that go into it, the preparation. Both teams, or let's say both players, have prepared with their entire lives for that moment. Okay, it can be the title, let's say, of the NBA, a UAAP championship, or a medal at the Olympics. Okay, and I remember no one Olympian saying that Olympics is not every 4 years, Olympics is every day. Diba? To be able to face that in yourself. The purpose, why am I doing this? Eh kung matalo ko, sasabihin ba ni Heidelin na, ay kung hindi ako mag-gold medal, hindi lang ako magte-train. Diba? Hindi naman ganun eh. So, it's giving yourself so that when that painful and bitter pill of defeat happens, you are not escaping from the pain. In fact, after all the consolation from fans, in fact, some of them would even say, even if our fans tell us, you're still the champion in our heart, pero talagang natalo ka, masakit yun. And no matter what adulation you get, or adoration you get from your fans, you will have to sleep each night and wake up each morning swallowing that bitter pill of defeat. And nobody can imagine that pain except the athletes who are really there. And I remember asking the champions for my research, anong pakiramdam ninyo pag natatalo kayo? Okay? That very, how would say, personal question. And it's very, really interesting what they had to say. I remember Bonko, for example, saying that, you know what, at that moment, it's very, very painful and intense. But when you allow yourself some time to step back, you will see that throughout your life, not just as an athlete, but as a person, all of these painful episodes, whether it's a loss in a game or in her case, the loss of a marriage, is that it has become the opportunity, okay, to be better as an individual and as a player. I wouldn't say it's easy, but she said that these losses are really opportunities to better oneself. And I remember also Paeng saying that after every loss, okay, the pain is real. Okay, you cannot run away from it. But for him, it's really a reminder to him to go back to the drawing table, so to speak, to go back onto daily training and analyze, okay, what were my lapses that I need to work on? So it's not a final judgment that you're not a good player because you lost. But one, it's feedback that I need to work on certain skills. There were probably lapses in my performance. Second, this is an opportunity for me to become a better athlete, to work harder and to aspire better in the next season. And another what do you call this? story that I heard from Baterias, which was very simple, and yet he said, um, ano mo, sabi niya, pag nananalo ako, nagpapasalamat ako sa Diyos. Nananalo ako kasi alam ko namang hindi ko magagawa kung ako lang. Pero pag natalo ako, alangan naman magtampo ako sa Panginoon kung gusto niyang i-bless yung kalaban ko. Diba? Sabi niya, hindi naman namin sinasabing lagi kaming dapat manalo at hindi rin namin sinasabi na hindi kami dapat matalo. Pero ang sa akin lang, sabi ni Bata Reyes, ay pag natatalo ako at naisip ko, siya naman ang pinagpala ng Diyos, ipagkakait ko ba yan sa Kanya? So see, there's even a different framing for him. And that is what makes sense to him, that every time I win, I consider it an honor, a blessing. But if I don't win and my opponent is blessing the process, who am I to take it against God or to take against my opponent that he had his time? So it appears that part of also managing defeat is also spiritual in that sense. Di ba? Na hindi maiiwasan yan talaga. So, balik tayo sa tanong mo, how can they bounce back? They have to find a meaning to that loss, a very personal meaning. And if losses are not permanent, they are temporary. In fact, this is also one of the lessons that I learned from our champions, that losses are temporary setbacks. They are not permanent statements of who you are as a person or as an athlete. You're no good. Tatalo ka, hindi mo nakuha yung championship. Okay? Kasi kung gano'n ang isipin natin, at talaga mawawalan tayo ng loob. Pero dahil alam nga ng mga atleta na winning and losing come together. You cannot have one or the other only. So, when you go for a championship, when you go for the tournament, when you go to the Olympics, you know fully well that you can reach your goals and succeed, but you can also miss it by a hairline. But will you still do it? Will you still train every day for the Olympics? If the answer is yes, then it is worth taking that risk.
So I like what you said, Doc. No? It's really a matter, well, a shift in perspective, in terms of the loss or all these adversities. It's really a matter of not throwing it away or avoiding it, but really welcoming it and using it as motivation to get up and strive harder. No? And yeah, I think it's a wonderful lesson, especially for those who have suffered a loss, not only in sports but but in beyond sports. And this is something that it's a good advice on how to look at it, right? I think you mentioned before regarding like you're a taekwondo athlete, right?
Yeah, I was what they call this, into taekwondo for many years, of course, and then there comes a point in your life where you cannot do everything that you used to do. So before I became a sports psychologist, I was into the sport. I belonged to a club. I had an exposure also in a national competition, and so it prepared me, of course, to be a sports psychologist. But going back to what you said a while ago before I proceed there, that we cannot run away from defeat. And I would say our champions even speak of the necessity of adversity. Okay, I have to say this now because that's exactly what they said. Now, when I asked them to look back in their lives and to point out what were the important moments or stepping stones in their lives, separately, all of them mentioned the big defeats or adversities that they encountered as part of what is important in becoming the high performers and the champions that they became. That if they had to go back in time, they will not remove all of these problems, all of these defeats, all of these failures that were so painful at the moment, because they knew that these were the jump of points, the stepping stone, as you would say, to greater heights of performance. Okay? So, hindi nila tatanggalin. Kahit napapiliin mo pa sila, kung uulitin nila yung buhay nila, hindi nila tatanggalin yung mga episodes na yan na masakit at mukhang talo at hindi nila nakuha yung kanilang pinagtrabahuhan.
Wonderfully said, Doc. So my last question, I'll try to summarize it. The situation right now, especially with the COVID, affecting student athletes and of course the working class, having to lose jobs because of the pandemic and everything. So how does adversity help them in their daily lives?
First of all, of course, this is a major global and collective adversity, which is both personal at the same time shared, with the rest of humanity. This is one point in our history where we cannot just localize a problem. So, katulad nung araw, halimbawa, merong gera, maaring yung gera na yan ay itong mga bansa lang na to, or let's say, kung meron man, and we had already epidemics or pandemics before, but they were very contained. No, it wasn't as widespread and as global as it is now with COVID. Why? Because of course our context also is very different. Travel and interconnectedness has never been this way, and therefore whatever virus, in fact we even have the word viral that describes how something, an event or an idea becomes widespread or global or worldwide in its reach. That word viral is exactly what we're experiencing now. So my take here, as I have learned also from the champion, is what is the meaning of COVID for us? Is it simply an enemy that we need to conquer, or a friend that we also need to acknowledge? And I remember, and I think I shared this with your team, I remember one of my taekwondo masters at that time that I was still, I think, a black belt, a new black belt. And he said that our opponents are our greatest teachers, okay, and can be also our best friends. Because when we go against, quote unquote, go against someone in competition, and this can also be in life, with people who give us a hard time, they actually show us the best and the worst of ourselves. So if we want to become better, we need to have the courage to face the biggest opponents we have in life, which can be, of course, competitors, contenders for the same thing, even teammates at work, or even bosses, or you can even say family members who appear to give us a hard time. And just like in sport, okay, the people who give you the most difficult times are the ones who actually bring out the best in you. And again, using the analogy, for instance, of a sandpaper, di ba? Yung sandpaper, talaga ayaw natin yan kasi napaka-gaspang. Pero, para saan ba yung sandpaper, di ba? Ginawa yan para to smoothen the surface of any wood furniture, for instance, which looks so beautiful after the sandpaper has been used against its surface, diba? So these people who actually reject us, give us a hard time, are like sandpaper in our life. After they have given us a rough time, just like a sandpaper, okay, they have done their jobs, their task in our lives. They cease to be rough, di ba? Yung sandpaper sa pahid niya dun sa nawawalan din naman siya ng roughness, di ba? As the table or the wood is getting smoother, the sandpaper becomes less rough. The same in life, di ba? In defeat, rejections, heartbreaks, these are like sandpaper in our life that are meant to smoothen us, to polish us as human beings. So it is similar with COVID. What is COVID teaching us? And I guess this is where we all need to look at the personal and the collective meaning of COVID. So totoo lang, before COVID, hindi natin mapigilan yung traffic, di ba? Yung travel, we all talk about concern for the environment, the atmosphere, o ngayon, di ba? Sa ayaw at sa gusto natin, we are all contributing to the rejuvenation of our entire atmosphere, okay? There is forced stoppage of traffic, di ba? Yung pinakaayaw natin ngayon, that's our default mode, di ba? Hindi tayo kailangan lumabas at magmalling para matuwa. We're learning how to have quality time with the people who are close to us, di ba? So, in that sense, diba, we are actually getting what we need, the lessons that we need to learn, and also the break that we need to learn from life. And so it is also with athletes, diba? They need to heal, they need to rest. We are getting what we need. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I like what you said about this whole what we're going through, the whole COVID. It's a gift, and of course we accept it. But it shouldn't bring us down, or we shouldn't give up on it. And as it is, right? I mean, we're still okay. We're still okay, and we continue to do what we do. And and some have actually realized that there are better things that are more important things, like what you said, like family and everything. So so I guess everything that we have, that we have no choice, but adversity is always there. We just have to accept it and treat it as our friend. That's what you would say.
Not just accept, but embrace.
Embrace
okay?
it.
Embrace it, diba? Na nandito na tayo eh. Siguro, it's about time that we make friends with COVID. It is here to stay, diba? We welcome it as part of our lives. And how do we manage, no? How do we manage? Ganun din naman ang ginagawa ng mga atleta. They scout their opponents, diba? And they play knowing fully well the strength of their opponents, okay, or their teammates. The same with COVID. Kilalanin natin siya.
Very insightful, Doc. Thank you very much for your time, and I will now turn you over to Simone.
Thanks, Rel. So, wow, Doc, so many interesting points, and of course, we're learning so much from you. And allow me to recap the top 3 things we uncovered from the discussion so far. So, Doc Marissa shares some of the top lessons she learned from Filipino champions and her experience also in sports psychology. So, when it comes to being a high performer wherever we are, and when it comes to achieving our goals, it helps to, 1, develop personal meaning, 2, be intentional in the execution, and 3, embrace adversity as a necessity. So, of course, all of this being the top lessons that we can learn from champions, drawing from your experience, Doc. So now it's time for our next segment that we call Crunch Time. So, all right, Doc, we're gonna throw you some questions, and you're gonna have to answer them as fast as you can. And there's no need to explain unless we can't help but ask. All right,
Okay.
Doc?
Go.
Okay. All right. So let's go. First question is, are you a sports person or a sports fan?
Sports person.
What's your favorite sport?
Swimming, actually.
Favorite sports film?
The last one I watched is the playlist. All 4 of them I really enjoyed. The playlist.
Favorite all-time sports coach?
There's so many of them. So sorry, but I don't want to say some.
Top of mind. Top of mind.
Yeah, top of mind.
In the Philippines,
Top of mind.
you know why? I work with coaches here. I don't want to play favorites. That's an unfair question. Unfair question.
Top of mind. Good one.
Okay, of course, because we're together in the book, the favorite teacher's pet goes jump.
Nice one, Coach Young Chico. Okay, let's pick it up a little bit. End goals or process goals?
Process.
Most memorable sports experience?
Losing in a national competition.
What do you prefer to work with, an individual or a team?
A team.
Favorite historical film?
Historical film, documentary. Wait, Here you go again. Ayaw ko yung mga favorite na yan kasi ang daming favorite, di ba?
Let's go with top of mind if it's a favorite.
The last one I watched was The Weight of Gold because it's about athletes and about winning.
Let's make sure to check that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, favorite biographical film.
Biographical film. Okay, of course, I like the film on Mandela.
Most inspiring
The most inspiring
speaker.
speaker. Okay. There are many. Here you go again. Ito mga most tsaka favorite na yan. Well, my favorite siguro in the local is actually a teacher. Is a teacher.
Yes.
A very okay lang ba?
Yeah, go.
Si Pagsi.
Oh yes, okay.
Yes.
Agree. Okay. Next question.
Is it my turn?
Sure.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
It's my turn.
Oh, your turn.
Yeah. Favorite food?
Vegetable. No, I'm not kidding. I can live with everything. I can live without everything else. Pero kailangan meron akong gulay.
Is there a particular gulay?
Broccoli.
Okay.
Nice. Teaching or learning?
Learning.
Nice.
All right. Me again. Hobbies in life?
Doing nothing.
The ocean or the mountain?
The ocean.
If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Removing poverty
Wow,
from the world.
That's great. Nakakaya naman.
Kailangan ng superpower dyan kasi, di ba? Ang hirap talaga.
Tama.
Favorite movie?
Movie na naman. Okay. Actually, it's an animation.
Okay.
It's an animation. I watched it actually a week ago. It's like Over the Moon.
Ooh.
Okay. Favorite book?
Favorite book. Okay, ayan na naman tayo sa favorite. Ang dami kong favorite book. You wouldn't believe it. There's this book I keep on going back to. The title is Jesus as a Psychiatrist, the best
Wow.
psychiatrist.
Interesting.
Okay. Pasabog question, Doc. Ateneo or UP?
Unfair! Unfair!
You've been waiting for this moment. No?
Hindi mo pwedeng pareho, di ba?
Okay, sige. We'll let her off the hook this time, Rels.
Okay.
Yeah, get me
And-
off that hook. Unfair. Oh.
Okay.
Fair.
Okay. So, life purpose in 3 words.
3 words.
Okay. 3 words.
3 words. Come on, let's go.
Okay. Kindness and love.
Wow.
Oh.
Great. That's really great. Alternative career.
Alternative career. A gardener.
Wow. Who would have thought? Last,
Yeah.
really.
Your favorite quote?
My favorite quote. Okay. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything will be added unto you.
That's
All right.
It's a verse. Yeah. No, but really, at the heart of it all, that's it.
Now, ding, 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 ding. I hope that sounded like a bell, but crunch time is done. Thank you, Doc.
Grabe, ang hirap. Yan ang pinakamahirap na parte nitong episode, ha? Kayo, ha? Naughty kayong tatlo.
It's really gonna put you on the spot more than those question and answer portion.
Yes.
Pero thank you, Doc, for being super game to participate in Crunch Time, and of course for being very open to share your story and knowledge with us. And so now we've come to the end of the episode for our final messages. Relly and Robbie, let's share with our teammates what we have in store for them in our next episodes.
Well, first of all, teammates, thank you for joining us on our first episode for 2021. Do catch us again next week. And we will have Akiko Thompson Guevara on Feb 13. And then I will go ahead and mention the rest. We have Rubel and Amit for Feb 20 and Mariel Benitez Haveliana on Feb 27. If you have any questions for them, if you want to send us a message, please send it to the Gold Digger PH on Facebook or also on YouTube. And you also can find us on Spotify. So thank you very much. And I'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Rel. So, Doc Marissa, your life story so far has been one of adversity and, more importantly, positivity. And we thank you so much for the time, the wisdom, and experience that you shared with us and the rest of the listeners. And it's thanks to personalities like you, there's a lot to learn from sports, and especially in building a champion mindset. And we wish you and the sports psychology community the best of luck moving forward. So teammates, we're happy to share with you that our efforts with Pitch and PH last year was a complete success. And more particularly with our typhoon response efforts with the help of Oakland, California-based Chunky Butt Ice Cream. If you recall, they were able to raise $3,000 in our effort to help our friends over at Bata PH who are helping communities in Marikina who were affected by Typhoon Ulysses. And we're very happy to announce that we've successfully turned over already 300 hygiene kits for deserving families over at Barangay Malanday, Marikina. So shout out to our friends over at Bata PH for being our distribution partner on the ground. And moving forward, we're working with Team Rock Ed Philippines with their Rock Ed relief efforts over at Cagayan Valley, Tuguegarao, and as well as the BJMP with their Rock the Rejas initiative. Again, more details on our Facebook page. So thank you so much for your generosity. Lastly, this is a new year and let's initiate the fundraising already. Let's continue helping out our fellow Filipinos who are in most need. So please follow our Facebook page for more details on how you too can pitch in for PH. So over to the woman of the hour, Doc Marissa Guinto. Your final message, please.
Wow. I mean, I am just, first of all, I'm so privileged to be in the company of this awesome team. I have really never enjoyed doing a webinar this way. First of all, it's a very creative effort, and I really am really privileged to be in your company. When thinking about what I'd like to leave to all our viewers, no, sana yung may pasalubong para sa inyo, really is that each one of you can be a high performer, if not yet, diba? And that word "yet" is very important. If you doubt yourself, always be willing to add "yet," okay, to your sentence, because if you think that you have not reached something that you aspire for, always remind yourself, "yet," okay? Hindi mo man nakuha ngayon, hindi pa tapos ang storya, okay? And that we are always in the process of writing and rewriting our stories. And as we learned from the champion, diba? Be bold in defining your own personal meaning, yung hugot natin, huwag natin ikahiya. Diba? Hindi natin kailangan maging pare-pareho sa ating mga hugot. At yung walang shortcut na buhay, wala naman talagang importanteng magagawa na hindi pinaghihirapan araw-araw. No? And all the champions that I have been privileged to meet nga in this research, this dissertation, and I would say life lesson that I learned from them, had to do the daily grind that each one of you are doing now, okay, at work, with your families, with your businesses. We are all in this together. And then, of course, really to embrace adversity as a necessity in this life to do great things. Okay, these are our jump off points, and as the champions have taught us, these are necessities that will really bring us closer and in the trajectory of reaching our goals. So we are not alone in this. And of course, I always thank the lessons that I've learned even from struggling. Okay, athletes who have made it, athletes who are aspiring. Thank you. I mean, they're all part of this process of where I am right now. Maraming salamat sa inyo, lalo na dito sa Gold Diggers.
Beautifully said, Doc. And that ends our session for today. Catch you on the next episode of The Gold Diggers. Remember to dream, dig in, and win. See you the next time on our next episode.